Before Sergio Leone made him a legend, Clint Eastwood was a failing TV actor that Italian directors discovered by accident. This is the story of how a lazy American cowboy who almost quit acting became Europe's biggest star and changed cinema forever. Lazy. Everyone in Hollywood said it about Clint Eastwood. Before Sergio Leone made him a legend, Clint was a failing TV actor that Italian directors discovered by accident. This is the story of how the lazy American cowboy who almost quit acting became Europe's biggest star and changed cinema forever. By 1958, Clint Eastwood had found steady work, but it came with a price that gnawed at his soul every single day. Rawhide, CBS's hit Western series, had made him recognizable to millions of Americans, but the role of Rowdy Yates felt like a creative prison that grew smaller with each passing episode. At 28 years old, Clint was playing a character he privately described as the idiot of the plains, a naive, boyish cowboy whose dialogue consisted mainly of asking questions and making obvious observations. The writers had crafted Rowdy as the eager young sidekick to trail Boss Gil favor, but for an actor who had lived through the Depression, military service, and years of manual labor, playing someone so inexperienced felt deeply artificial. His frustration with the character was matched by his growing reputation on set as difficult to work with. Crew members and directors began calling him lazy and lackadaisical, not because he couldn't act, but because his heart simply wasn't in the performance. Tommy Carr, one of the series' most prolific crew members, famously said, "I never started a day with Clint Eastwood in the first scene because you knew he was going to be late, at least a half hour or an hour." Gene Fowler Jr., a frequent director on the series, described Clint's attitude as one of someone who relied on his looks and just didn't work hard enough. This criticism stung because it missed the real issue. Clint wasn't lazy about acting in general. He was creatively stifled by playing a character that felt like a betrayal of everything he had learned about real life. The boyishness that casting directors had initially found appealing was becoming a liability. At 30, Clint was tired of playing someone who seemed perpetually surprised by the world around him. He wanted to portray characters who understood life's complexities, not naive young men who needed everything explained to them. His co-star Paul Breingar, who played the cook Wishbone, later revealed that Eastwood was very unhappy about playing a teenager type. The disconnect between his real-world experience and his on-screen persona was creating a professional crisis that threatened to end his acting career before it really began. Despite Rawhide's critical acclaim and popular success, the show won an American Heritage Award as the best Western series on television. Clint felt trapped in a role that showcased none of his natural strengths. He was learning to direct some episodes and developing ideas about filmmaking, but as an actor, he felt invisible and misused. The irony would later become clear. His reputation for laziness during Rawhide was actually evidence of an actor who demanded more from his craft than a successful television series could provide. The escape route from Rawhide came from the most unexpected source: Italian filmmakers who had never heard of American television's complaints about Clint Eastwood's work ethic. In 1964, during the show's hiatus, Clint received an offer that would either revive his career or confirm his critics' belief that he lacked serious professional ambitions. Sergio Leone, a relatively unknown Italian director, was preparing to make a Western unlike anything Hollywood had ever produced. His vision required an American actor who could embody a new kind of hero, someone harder, more morally ambiguous, and infinitely more dangerous than the clean-cut cowboys dominating American screens. The offer was modest by Hollywood standards, $15,000 for a starring role in what would become a fistful of dollars. Many established American actors had already turned down the project, viewing European Westerns as career suicide. James Coburn and Charles Bronson, both far more established than Clint, had declined Leone's offers without serious consideration. But for Clint, the opportunity represented something more valuable than money: creative freedom. Leone's script described a character simply called the man with no name, someone defined not by dialogue or backstory, but by actions and presence. After years of playing the talkative, naive Rowdy Yates, the prospect of portraying someone who let guns speak louder than words felt like liberation. The production would be filmed in Spain, doubling for the American Southwest, with an international cast speaking multiple languages. Most Hollywood actors would have viewed these conditions as unprofessional and chaotic. Clint saw them as an adventure that could teach him things about filmmaking that no American studio would ever provide. His agents advised against the project, warning that appearing in a low-budget Italian Western could damage his television career. CBS executives made it clear that they expected him to focus on Rawhide rather than pursuing side projects that might distract from his primary responsibilities. But Clint had reached a breaking point with conventional Hollywood wisdom. The same industry voices that had labeled him lazy were now telling him to avoid risks and stick with what was safe. His decision to accept Leone's offer wasn't just about taking a job, it was about betting his entire future on the belief that there were better ways to make westerns than anything American television had shown him. The journey to Spain would mark the end of Clint Eastwood, the reluctant television actor, and the birth of an entirely new kind of movie star. He just didn't know it yet. Arriving in Spain for the production of A Fistful of Dollars, Clint Eastwood encountered a filmmaking approach so radically different from American television that it might as well have been taking place on another planet. Sergio Leone's vision required more than just acting. It demanded that Clint help create an entirely new cinematic language. Leone had studied American westerns obsessively, but his interpretation emphasized elements that Hollywood had always treated as background details. The squint that would become Clint's trademark wasn't originally an acting choice. It was a practical response to the brutal Spanish sun and the dust kicked up by wind machines that Leone used to create atmosphere. The costume that would define the character came together almost by accident. The poncho was sourced locally in Spain, chosen more for its authentic, worn appearance than any grand design concept. Clint wore the same one throughout the entire trilogy and famously never had it cleaned, believing that its accumulating dust and wear made the character more believable. Leone's directing style was unlike anything Clint had experienced. Where American television demanded quick, efficient coverage of dialogue scenes, Leone spent hours setting up single shots that might last only seconds in the final film. He was creating a visual language where close-ups of eyes carried more dramatic weight than entire speeches. The famous squint that would become synonymous with Clint Eastwood was actually encouraged by Leone, who told him, "I need a mask more than an actor." The Italian director was creating a character defined by mystery rather than exposition, someone whose past remained unknown and whose motivations had to be read through expression and action rather than dialogue. Perhaps most importantly, Leone allowed Clint to bring his natural minimalism to the role. After years of being criticized for doing too little in scenes, he was finally working with a director who understood that sometimes the most powerful performances came from restraint rather than exaggeration. The character's moral ambiguity was revolutionary for Western heroes. The man with no name wasn't fighting for justice or protecting innocent people. He was playing two criminal factions against each other for personal profit. This cynical motivation felt more honest to Clint than the noble cowboy roles that dominated American westerns. Working with international actors who spoke different languages forced Clint to communicate through physical presence rather than verbal chemistry. This limitation became a strength, reinforcing the character's isolation and self-reliance. By the time filming wrapped, something fundamental had changed in how Clint approached acting. He had discovered that his natural tendencies toward economy and observation weren't flaws to be corrected, but strengths to be emphasized. The transformation of Clint Eastwood from television journeyman to international movie star happened not in Hollywood, but in Italian theaters where audiences had never heard of Rawhide or the actor's reputation for laziness. When A Fistful of Dollars premiered in 1964, European critics and moviegoers responded to something they had never seen before, an American Western that felt both familiar and completely revolutionary. Italian audiences embraced the film's moral complexity and visual sophistication in ways that American viewers might not have. The cynical worldview that Leone brought to the Western genre resonated with European sensibilities shaped by recent wars and social upheaval. The Man with No Name represented a hero for more complicated times. Critics across Europe began writing about Clint's performance in terms that would have shocked his American colleagues. Instead of lazy or wooden, Italian and French reviewers described his acting as minimalist, powerful, and authentically American. They saw his restraint as evidence of depth rather than limitation. The financial success was immediate and overwhelming. A Fistful of Dollars became one of the highest-grossing films in Italian cinema history, earning more money than most Hollywood productions of the same period. For Clint, who'd been making television actor wages, the international box office returns represented financial freedom he had never imagined. More importantly, the creative satisfaction of working with Leone had reminded him why he had wanted to act in the first place. The character of the Man with No Name utilized all of his natural strengths: his height, his distinctive features, his ability to convey threat without words, and most crucially, his understanding of working-class American masculinity. Leone immediately began planning sequels, recognizing that he had found the perfect actor for his unique vision of Western storytelling. For a Few Dollars More was already in development before A Fistful of Dollars had finished its initial European release. The irony was profound. The actor that Hollywood had written off as unprofessional and lazy had become Europe's newest movie star. The same qualities that had frustrated American television directors, his reluctance to over-explain emotions, his preference for action over dialogue, his natural gravitas, were exactly what Leone needed for his revolutionary approach to Western filmmaking. When news of the European success began reaching Hollywood, industry executives were baffled. How had an actor they considered marginally talented become an international sensation? The answer lay in the difference between American and European approaches to screen acting, and in Sergio Leone's recognition that Clint Eastwood's supposed limitations were actually his greatest strengths. The completion of Leone's Dollars trilogy with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966 marked the end of Clint Eastwood's apprenticeship and the beginning of his emergence as a global cinema icon. Each film had built upon the success of its predecessor, but the final installment achieved something unprecedented. It created a character so iconic that it would influence Western filmmaking for decades. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly represented Leone's most ambitious vision, featuring larger set pieces, more complex moral themes, and Clint's most fully realized portrayal of the Man with No Name. The film's famous Mexican standoff sequence, with its extreme close-ups and Ennio Morricone's haunting score, became one of the most parodied and referenced scenes in cinema history. By this time, Clint had fully embraced Leone's visual approach to storytelling. His performance relied almost entirely on physical presence and facial expression, with the character's thoughts and motivations conveyed through looks rather than exposition. The famous squint had evolved from a practical response to Spanish weather into a deliberate acting choice that conveyed threat, assessment, and determination simultaneously. The trilogy's delayed American release in 1967 created a unique situation. Clint returned to the United States as an international movie star, whose success had been built entirely outside the Hollywood system. American audiences were seeing these films for the first time, while European viewers already considered him one of cinema's major figures. The contrast with his Rawhide work was striking and immediate. American critics who had ignored his television performances suddenly found themselves writing about an actor who had seemingly appeared from nowhere, with a fully formed screen persona unlike anything in American westerns. The financial impact was immediate and substantial. The trilogy's American box office success transformed Clint from a television actor earning weekly wages into one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars. More importantly, it proved that there was a massive audience for Western films that treated the genre's themes with greater moral complexity. Hollywood's response was swift and pragmatic. The same studios that had shown little interest in Clint's career development suddenly wanted to build entire projects around his newfound star power. Offers poured in for Western roles that would capitalize on his man-with-no-name persona. But Clint had learned something crucial during his time with Leone. Success came not from accepting whatever roles were offered, but from maintaining creative control over the projects that defined his career. The lazy actor who had frustrated television directors had become a movie star who understood exactly what he wanted from his craft. The transformation from lazy television actor to international movie star represented more than just a career change. It was proof that creative success often requires rejecting conventional wisdom about what constitutes professional behavior. Clint Eastwood's journey from the Rawhide soundstages to Sergio Leone's Spanish locations demonstrated that sometimes the qualities that make someone difficult to work with in one context are exactly what make them irreplaceable in another. The reputation for laziness that had frustrated American television directors turned out to be evidence of an actor who demanded more from his craft than routine assignments could provide. His reluctance to embrace the boyish enthusiasm of Rowdy Yates wasn't unprofessionalism. It was an artist's instinct that the character didn't match his authentic strengths. Leone's genius lay not in changing Clint Eastwood, but in recognizing what he already was, a screen actor whose natural minimalism and working-class authenticity could create something entirely new in Western cinema. The Italian director saw past Hollywood's narrow definitions of leading man behavior to identify qualities that no American filmmaker had thought to value. The success of the Dollars trilogy established principles that would guide the rest of Clint's career. He learned that international perspectives could reveal possibilities that domestic industry thinking missed. He discovered that creative control was more valuable than immediate financial rewards. Most importantly, he understood that his own instincts about character and story were more reliable than the conventional wisdom of established entertainment industry figures. The man-with-no-name character became a template not just for Western heroes, but for a new kind of movie star. Someone who could convey complex emotions through minimal expression, who could command attention without demanding it, and who could embody American masculinity without conforming to Hollywood's sanitized version of heroism. Perhaps most significantly, the experience taught Clint that geographic and cultural boundaries could provide creative opportunities that domestic success never would. His willingness to work in Spain with Italian directors and international casts opened possibilities that purely American projects could never have provided. The actor who had been criticized for showing up late to Rawhide sets had become someone who understood that the most important creative decisions often involved knowing what projects to avoid rather than which ones to accept. The lazy actor had become a movie star who worked harder than anyone in Hollywood suspected, but only on projects worthy of his effort. Ready for part 3, where we'll explore the shocking family secrets that made headlines around the world. Don't miss the scandals that Hollywood tried to hide.
Don't forget to hit the like button if you liked the video and subscribe if you want videos like this to come. See you in the next story.